Katie Bowyer, welcome to One Amazing Experience. Thank you so much for joining us. I was looking at your LinkedIn when I was doing prep for this, and I noticed that you had a dance background, so you'd studied dance previously. Can you take me from studying dance through to where you are now working with Yes Events?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of my dance background, I started when I was young, just walking, and eventually sort of into my teens, I became involved in the world of competitive street dance. So step up and all that cool stuff that looks really cool in the movies, but is a lot of waiting around in some weird outfits in a shopping centre somewhere. Nevertheless, I absolutely adored it, and so ultimately when I decided that I wanted to go to university, I wanted to follow something which I knew was going to be a passion rather than work. So I studied dance at the University of Chichester, and I wanted to broaden my horizons a little bit, so I chose to focus on contemporary dance rather than street dance to kind of try and add another page to my book. And as part of that course, for one of my modules, I had to do a work placement, which I was lucky enough to get a placement with Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council, doing event management for their Be Love Festival, which ran as part of kind of a longer Basingstoke festival that happened over the space of a month. So I was involved in a few little bits in and around that, and absolutely fell in love with doing it. I loved the organisational side of it. I've always been quite a structured and kind of methodical person, so yeah, kind of leaning into those skills, but then just liaising with all of these amazing artists. It was dancers, it was choirs, it was street theatre, it was, you know, a huge range of entertainment, and I just loved being the person over all the top of that and kind of being the common connection for all of them. And yeah, luckily I had some really great mentors at the council, and they said, you're built for this, you're doing an amazing job. You know, since it was a university placement, it was an unpaid position, but they said, if you want to come back and do this after you finish university, we're more than happy to pay you for it. And yeah, from their word of mouth recommendations and kind of the connections that I made through those roles led to a handful of different freelancing opportunities, and yeah, kind of just snowballed into this amazing events management role, and ultimately I ended up here at Yes Events.
Fantastic. And so we mentioned your organizational sort of your capabilities. I was saying before we started recording that I think that that's sort of like a common through line with many people that work in the events industry. So from that point, that first sort of taste of working in the industry, you've worked at some amazing places. So I saw Rock Choir on your CV and Philharmonic Orchestra and all these incredible venues that you're working at now with Yes Events. Would you say that your approach has changed and adapted through your experiences at these places, or has it sort of been the same sort of process all along?
Yeah, as I said, I've always been quite an organised, methodical person. So I think from an organisational standpoint, my approach hasn't changed a huge amount. But in terms of everything else around there, every role gives you something to learn from. So in every role, in every different event, you'll encounter an experience or a situation that you haven't prepared for or have never encountered before, and either you nail it and it goes really well and you think, okay, this is absolutely how I need to deal with this if this ever happens again, or if maybe things sometimes don't go so well, it's a learning opportunity and you learn that actually that's not how to deal with that, or, you know, okay, maybe I could have done this better. So every job role comes with its own set of opportunities and things to learn from. And I think ultimately my biggest takeaway overarchingly from the other roles that I've done is that having passion and being kind and being patient goes such a long way in this industry. I think, you know, the industry is actually built on people doing each other favors and having good working relationships, and you are much likely more likely to get that from a relationship if you show your passion. Like, I want to work with people that are passionate about what they want to do. I want to work with people that are kind and patient and will help me if I need it, and then I'll repay the favour however I can. And I think that's kind of probably my overarching lesson from all of the experiences that I've had so far.
I love that. It's like you never quite know when you're going to need that very niche skill or person to come and help you. So yeah, that's great. That's great. And I guess, so you mentioned you want to work with people that are passionate, creative, they've got great ideas. And I know, clients always have those things as well. They have these things they want to achieve, and they sometimes have a vision of how they want to get there, but sometimes not. I guess the challenge is with different clients come different requirements, different needs. So how do you go about sort of delivering that bespoke experience for clients that have, very different briefs from the ones you've worked on previously?
Yeah, I think active listening is a huge part of my job. There are a lot of events, and especially, I'm working a lot with weddings at the moment. And, to be realistic, there are a lot of things that you tend to hear the same thing for a lot of events. But I think providing that bespoke experience is listening and actively listening to that bride or that groom every single time, because actually you don't want to make an assumption and think, well, they're going to want that because everyone wants that, and actually that's not the case. But also, I think being able to place yourself, not just for weddings but for all events, being able to place yourself in the client's shoes and thinking, how would I want to be treated if this was me having this conversation? And I touched on weddings. It's your wedding day. You don't want anyone telling you, oh yeah, we've done 10,000 of these, like this isn't special for us, because this is one of the most special days of your life, and you want it to feel like that, and you want everyone to treat it with that reverence. So I think working with these wedding clients, as I've been doing, a lot more as I've come on board with Yes Events, has made me realize the importance of kind of trying to place yourself in the client's shoes and being receptive to their ideas.
It's so hard to remember that sometimes, because you can get into a rhythm, and obviously there are some things that you will take and you're like, oh, I did this last time and it worked really well. But yeah, sort of remembering that each person is a sort of brand new opportunity that you have to approach in that way. Yeah, absolutely. And so I mentioned I came across your work on LinkedIn. You're posting these incredible shots of some of the venues that you're working at the moment. I think Gunnersbury Park, Grove House, a few of those. What do you look for when you are speccing out a venue for an event, or potentially taking a client round?
So I think in the work that we do with Yes Events, we try to partner with venues that we feel can be enhanced by the services that we offer. So there's no point in us, from our perspective, there's no point in selling something for the hell of selling it, because ultimately the client's just going to be disappointed, and it's going to end up bad for them, it's going to end up bad for us, and it's just not worth doing. So for us, maybe perhaps like highly decorated or venues with their own production, they wouldn't be suitable for us to partner with, because we're not adding anything for the client. We're just sort of overlapping or providing pointless things, and that's not what the client needs. So for us, I look for venues that are either kind of blank canvas venues that we can do loads of stuff with, that we can absolutely transform the space, or ones that have got particularly beautiful architecture or features that we can highlight. So like we work with Scion Park, for example, Ashridge House, you mentioned Gunnersbury, Grove House. These are all places that have got these like stunning facades or stunning grounds that we can walk in there and say, okay, this can be, this is a beautiful venue on its own, we can really take this to the next level. Whereas sometimes you walk into a venue and think, actually, there's not a lot I can do here, and I think trying to push something here would be unrealistic. So yeah, I think for us it's about working with venues that we know we can shape properly and effectively, so that we can do right by the client as well.
So being really clear on that before you start sort of talking to venues is key. But from speaking to lots of people that are planning and organizing events, they'll draw inspiration from a lot of different sources. So what is a book, podcast, album, show that you've been into recently? It doesn't have to be connected to work. It's just something that you're liking at the moment.
I have been watching the Dark Crystal series on Netflix. So
I've not come across that.
It's all done with puppets. So it's, if you're familiar with it, it's the same Jim Henson team that made Labyrinth with David Bowie in it back in the day. So I'm a huge fan of Labyrinth. I have part of the movie tattooed on my leg. I'm a huge fan, and I was a huge fan of the original Dark Crystal movie as well. So for me, maybe it's a bit of a nostalgia-driven love for it, but I hugely appreciate the artistry of these puppets that they've made completely from scratch, and these things that they've actually built rather than being CGI'd. So, you know, obviously I fully appreciate CGI as an art form on its own, but for me, someone that's actually handmade these incredibly kind of freaky realistic looking puppets, I just think is absolutely amazing, and I get completely drawn into that world. And yeah, I've been loving
awesome.
it.
I think I saw a YouTube sort of documentary on how they created the creatures and stuff. Amazing artistry, which I guess has some overlap with sort of some creations that might be put in. Well, fingers crossed you get a client that, you know, says, "Have you seen this Netflix show?" as their brief, and then you'd be like,
the person I've been waiting for my whole life.
Yeah, we were. Dream client.
Buckle in,
Amazing.
we're ready to go.
I get that actually brings on that quite neatly to our next question, which you've got, you know, taking that example, let's say you did have a client that wanted something like that. You've got the imagination, you've got the inspiration, but it's sometimes tricky to balance that with the practicality needed to actually, deliver an event. So have you found that difficult through your career? How do you balance that sort of balance of creativity and practicality?
I think that stuff like Instagram and TikTok has made it significantly harder. I have clients now that will come to me with something they've seen on TikTok or something they've seen on Instagram, and they'll send me a video or a picture and say, I want exactly that. And sometimes you have to go back and be really realistic and say, I can do that for you, but that specific thing is probably going to cost you like 80 grand. And they'll say, oh, well, I've got a budget of 1,000. And then you have to be realistic and upfront about, you know, budgetary restraints and things like that. But also there's so much scope now for things that have been edited into something that's not actually physically achievable. So I've had clients come to me and say, I want this really specific piece of lighting, and I've looked at it, and me and my team have looked at it, and we've ended up having to realize that actually this has been edited in. This isn't actually something that's realistically been created, and actually physically this isn't doable. And at that point you just have to go back to a client and sort of just manage expectations as well as you can. I try not to go back with this isn't doable, tough. I always try and go back with a look, this isn't doable, but I can get close by doing X, Y, Z, and you know, this is how we do it and this is how we build it. But I'll be really realistic in saying, look, this is the closest I can get, but it's not going to look exactly like that, because, you know, as I've said before, ultimately it just ends into people getting let down and people feeling like they haven't got what they set out to achieve, and that's just disappointing for everyone. So as much as I can avoid that, I absolutely do.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that, hasn't it? And sort of the conversation about AI and these amazing things that look fantastically real but just could not be done recently. Are you using, maybe not for necessarily for image generation, but for other things, are you using AI in your work at the moment, or are you planning to, or is it not something you're interested in?
Personally, I'm not using it hugely. Sometimes I will use it when writing proposals, if I'm looking for kind of particular descriptive language that just isn't coming into my brain at that precise moment. It's really useful in writing things in a certain way. But sort of outside of that, I think I'm quite driven by creating an authentic connection with my clients and couples, which I feel like when I put AI in there, it's another filter like between me and an actual connection. So I don't use it as much, but I fully appreciate the benefits of it. And I think it is really interesting watching how it is growing and shaping the way that events are planned and executing. So it's definitely something that I've kind of got an interest in and I'm watching just to kind of see where it goes. But yeah, personally, on a daily basis, it's not something that I'm using a huge amount.
I think a lot of people are sort of just dipping their toes in. They're sort of just sort of seeing, is this something that's going to be useful? But I think it's the right approach, because until it becomes more apparent, you know, what we can and can't do with this technology, it's probably sensible to keep your existing process. That makes sense. Let's say you've done the creative brief, you've looked at the logistics, technology, you've got the sort of plan in place. It's come to the point where you need to obviously have a team to deliver and, you know, make your vision become reality. What's your approach, or what, I guess, maybe the Yes Events team's approach to building teams that can deal with the requirements of the events that you do?
Yeah, when we look to build a team at Yes Events, we have 4 pillars, and that's what we're kind of driven towards. That's the standard that we aim for. And our 4 pillars are dependable, curious, passionate, and enthusiastic. So they're not things that are particularly set in the way that you can go and do a course on it and get qualified in it. It's more of a state of mind and kind of a personality trait more than anything else, because skills and specifics can be learned, but the way that people are and the way they approach challenges is much less so. So yeah, I think we look for people and how they work rather than the specific, you know, qualifications or skills that they have.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a similar thing. We call them hospitality qualities. Really hard to like tangibly measure these sort of characteristics. But yeah, I think that's the way you have to go. Hire the attitude, train the skills, and the rest will come.
Completely agree.
If you are training team members, are there specific skills that, you know, if you found somebody that's got a fantastic personality, what are the sort of skills that you'd be looking to sort of help them build?
So we're lucky in that we've got a really good relationship with our suppliers. So, you know, our lighting suppliers, sound suppliers, etc. We've got fantastic relationships with those companies, which means that we have the unique opportunity to bring in people from those companies to train on specific pieces of equipment. So, you know, stuff like the MA lighting desks and bits and pieces like that. We have the people from those companies come in to train our teams. And so we're looking for people that obviously have the capacity and the drive to be able to do those qualifications and kind of absorb that information.
I'm aware of time, so I will skip ahead a few questions. What would your one amazing experience be? So this could be somewhere you've been, an experience that you've had as a guest, an event that you have managed, or even just like your dream event that you would like to put on in the future.
Yeah, sure. So I have to give a shout out here. My one amazing experience is a venue called Dodford Manor Barn. So I've done a lot of venue tours as both a client and a supplier and a partner, and, you know, a whole range of different positions. But I'm getting married next year, and Dodford Manor.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Dodford Manor was the first venue that I went to go and view. And so doing that from a client side of things, being in the industry that I'm in, was a super bizarre experience for me. But a woman called Abby conducted my venue tour, and she was absolutely spectacular. She gave us such a fantastic tour, such a fantastic sort of rundown of our day and exactly what it would look like. She painted a picture in a way that I hadn't experienced on a venue tour before, and it absolutely sold the venue for me. Her way of connecting with clients and her mannerisms and just the way that she sold the venue informed a lot of how I then went on to go and do things moving forward, and the way that I was dealing with my clients, sort of thinking back to how she was with me. We went off and viewed a couple of other venues thinking, is the bar really that high? Like, you know, it's the first one we viewed. Are we just being too excited by the first place we've seen? And absolutely no other venue lived up to the bar that she set.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. If people want to find out more about yourself, Yes Events, where should they go?
So they can either go to our website, which is www.yesevents.co.uk, or they can email me directly at katie@yesevents.co.uk.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing your one amazing experience. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joel. Take care.